Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rickerman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr. Vine? Mr. Davis? Mayor Benjamin?
Aye. If there's just a quick point of personal privileges, can we take up item 53 real quick, and then come on back to the rest of the agenda?
Item 53, under other matters, council is asked to approve the installation of 4 speed humps in the Wood Lake Drive area as requested by the Traffic Engineering Division.
I did that because Walt Carton, I think he wanted to say something about that.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here tonight. I live at 1686 Wood Lake Drive. The plan that's before you has been crafted with the residents, working with your city staff. The real reason I wanted to get up here and talk was to let you know what a great job your staff did. They were extremely responsive. Robert Anderson and Dave Brewer in particular, they were responsive. They worked with us to come up with a plan that made sense. And so on behalf of all the residents of Wood Lake Drive, I wanted to thank them and the city for working so well with us.
Awesome. Thank you. Move approval.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Rickerman?
I just wanted to add, since this came up earlier than anticipated, I'd like our staff to formally send a letter in the same instance on traffic calming for Kilburn between Jackson Boulevard and Harrison Road. That neighborhood is struggling. It's a very long stretch. Speed humps aren't the issue. It needs 4-way stops. It is a DOT road, but I would like us as a council and staff to send a letter in support of finding a measure to slow the traffic down in that neighborhood.
Absolutely. All right. You want to make that a formal vote?
I will after this.
Okay.
It's appropriate time to bring it up.
Move the previous question on Wood Lake Drive speed humps.
Mr. Rickerman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye. Thank you for that indulgence. Madam City Manager?
Yes, sir. Item 26, annexation interim comprehensive plan map amendment and interim zoning map amendment for these parcels along Bluff Road as referenced and Hamlet Street as referenced.
Move approval.
Second.
All right. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Rickerman?
I'm not going to support it as it is in front of us. I don't believe that we should be annexing this piece of property at this time. I believe that we should have allowed this property to move forward in its current county and be built, and then at an appropriate time we could have moved forward. I just wanted everyone to know why I was voting no.
All right. Any further discussion? Move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rickerman?
No.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr. Vine, we're on item 26. Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
No. All right.
We will move into a period of presentations. Item number 32, the recognition of the 2017 Historic Preservation Book Prize Award recipient, Ms. Catherine Fleming Bruce, to be presented by the Honorable Edward H. McDowell, Jr.
Ms. Bruce, where are you? There she is. We are so delighted to have Catherine Bruce as a part of our, come on up. We're delighted to have Catherine as a part of the City of Columbia family. She's been so recognized for all of the good things she does here in this city and, of course, outside of the city in other places. A noted author, preservationist, a historian. We honor you tonight, and we say thank you for all that you've done. And since you're so close to the mic, say a word to us.
Well, usually I'm full of words, and this time I'm a little bit choked up. So I appreciate so much the opportunity to say thanks and the recognition. I think the phone call that I got about this award was the most shocking phone call I ever got. But it is a national award, and I'm very excited about it because it puts the story of Majeska Simpkins House and 4 other South Carolina civil rights sites among other civil rights sites. And so that's the work that the city has taken on with Columbia 63 and other work that it's doing. So we will now be able to expand on what you're doing already through this book. So we're very pleased with the first African American to receive this award.
That's wonderful.
So I thank you very much. And that's the book there.
It's fantastic, fantastic. Ed, you want us?
Yeah.
Councilman McDowell has a point of personal privilege.
Mr. Mayor, anytime someone moves into the city with a lot of energy and creativity, we want to recognize that person. We are delighted to have Ms. Raquel Thomas, a new resident in our city, plus a new business owner in the Vista. She has business in Columbia Mall. She's a noted author that is widely, it's all over the internet. How do you mend a broken heart? Is that right? It's close. It's close. Raquel is an asset and will be an asset to our city as her entrepreneurial skills develop. We are delighted to have her. She's the new business owner on Lady Street in the Vista. We're just delighted. Raquel, please stand.
Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to stand in front of you today. I am Raquel Richardson Thomas, and as Councilman McDowell has stated, I just purchased real estate downtown Columbia off of Lady Street, and I'll be moving my retail store there. And our main focus is to focus on joining fashion and art and empowering young entrepreneurs in the city. I have a few businesses. Childcare is one of my babies, and I have a new nonprofit organization based here in Columbia, which will focus solely on children and education. So thank you for allowing me to come in front of you today, and I hope to see you guys soon. Thank you. Thank you.
Congressman, you got signs yet, Congressman?
Let's not have any comments now. I knew that was going to come.
Raquel, we're excited about having you here. We had a great phone conversation, and just excited about the new things and the efforts, Catherine, on preserving our history as well. So it's wonderful to see the past and the future meet in such awesome ways. And thank you, Reverend McDowell.
Sure.
Madam City Manager.
Yes, sir. Item 33, Adventure Children's Museum update. Ms. Karen Coltrane, CEO, and Dr. John Dozier, board chairman for Adventure Children's Museum.
This must be a vacation day at USC. You don't have to wear a shirt and tie. But I see everybody else back there has shirts and ties on. That's,
Dr. Pastides isn't in.
okay, is that what it is? Okay. Hey, Karen.
Mayor, Council, thank you so much for letting us come and give you an update on what's going on at Adventure. First, I have so many things to thank you for. I have to list them out, so forgive me. I'm going to look at my list. But first of all, thank you for your help with refinancing Adventure's debt. It's very helpful to allow us to move forward with that restructured. And I especially want to thank your amazing CFO for his hard work at getting us there. So thank you so much.
Don't say that too often. He gets a really big head. He's got to get through these double doors on the way out of here
that's
tonight.
Okay. And it was very exciting to learn that we both went to the same high school in a small town in Virginia. I'm a little bit older than him, so we missed each other, but just barely. So that was fun. I want to thank you also for always including us in our annual allocation. I want you to know that all of us are so grateful to the city, and we take what we get and we leverage that as best we can to bring the largest and best children's museum in the Southeast to Columbia. So we are continue to do that. I also want to thank you so much for helping us leverage the grant we got from NASA to build the flight exhibit, which just opened on Saturday. If you haven't noticed, there's an airplane hanging out of the side of our building. That is a permanent exhibit. That's not going anywhere. I also want to thank Ms. Libby because she always encourages me to spend money locally, and we really worked hard to do that. So that was built with South Carolina ingenuity and design work, and almost all the money was spent right here in Columbia when we could, South Carolina if we had to, a little further out. Although we didn't have any cockpits laying around that nobody was using, so I did have to go out of state for that. But the rest of it was spent here. So thank you for helping us make that exhibit possible. It opened on Saturday. We have had 4,007 visitors through in the 4 days since it's opened, and it's a big hit. Mayor, I have a picture of you from the opening here with General Stan Hood, who we named the cockpit for, who is a Columbia resident and a very important person in the aviation world, and his son, Mark Hood, was instrumental in figuring out how to make that cockpit hang off the side of that building. So I have that for you, and we have notes from the children who are in our camp this week who are so excited and thanking all of you for making the new exhibit possible. So I just wanted to.
It's a wonderful exhibit, wonderful, and General Hood was visibly moved. I mean, I think every time he talked about it, he was about to start crying.
Yeah,
he's a tough cookie too. So it's a wonderful tribute, and I'd be happy to accept it.
Well, we're proud to have it have that cockpit there with his name on it. I also wanted to thank a couple of you individually. Councilman Duvall, thank you for coming and cooking to help Adventure, and Mayor Benjamin, you as well. My husband's still talking about the coconut pie. It was appreciated by everybody. I want to thank Councilwoman Devine, who gave up her Thanksgiving to come help us serve food to people in need. I also want to thank Councilman Davis for coming and helping us kick off our USDA summer feeding program. We have given 3,139 meals and snacks through the USDA program at the museum. We provide the admission for families who can't afford it, and USDA does the meal. And Saturday when I was in the museum for our opening, I was taking phone calls all morning asking if we had meals on the weekends. USDA doesn't do the meal program on the weekends, but I think we're going to try to figure out how to make some of that happen as well, because people need the meals all the time. So just want you to know we're out in 11 after-school programs, running them in Richland 1. Half of Adventure's operating budget is outside of the building doing programming, and it's just not a story we tell enough. So I would thank you all, because I know you do tell it, and we so appreciate it.
So I just wanted to add my voice to the chorus of thanks that Karen is providing on behalf of the Board of Trustees. at Adventure Children's Museum. We thank you profusely for your commitment to our mission, which is to inspire youth, children, and the adults who care about them to experience the joy of learning. But we do that through a number of programs and services, and Karen has mentioned them: our commitment to STEM, our commitment to workforce development, our commitment to making sure that every child has the opportunity to experience the educational opportunities that we provide at Adventure Children's Museum. It's important work that we do, and it's important that you're supporting it, and we couldn't do it without your leadership. And of course, I would be remiss to not mention the fact that we have a wonderful leader in Karen, and we certainly appreciate your continued support of her.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Our attendance under our dollar admission program for families on WIC, SNAP, and Medicaid is up almost 300% over last year. Wow. So families are figuring it out and coming.
I know I've told you all, my very first summer job was working in the Children's Museum, so it's had a place in my heart for many years. I believe that the physical plant of the Adventure Children's Museum is second to none. It is a fantastic facility that I think is only overshadowed by the incredible programmatic emphasis of the museum, really reaching out to impact the lives of our children from across not just this city and region, but across the state. And I want to encourage you all to keep doing exactly what you're doing. I think you're doing fantastic work. We're thankful for you.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us do it.
We appreciate it.
And I just want to thank you, and Karen, you thanked us, but I just think Adventure, you're always there as a partner when we need you. You all partnered with us last year with our cookbook, Fit for a Kid, and then this summer you've done nutrition classes with Chef Kenny and Chef Ashley have been doing healthy cooking classes for our families during our Family Wellness Challenge, which is always a great treat to come in and learn healthy ways that don't always look and taste healthy for our families. So whenever we ask, you're there, and so I appreciate your partnership and continuing to help us to bring really quality, meaningful programming to the citizens of Columbia.
Thank you.
Amen.
And if I could take a moment of personal privilege, the flight exhibit is an amazing exhibit. So for those of you who have children, please bring your children out. But I warn you that you have to resist the temptation as an adult to move your child aside, to sit in the pilot seat yourself and fly the plane. It's a wonderful exhibit. Please come out and see it.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Thank you. All right.
Mr. Mayor, item 34, the homeless court update by Mr. George Cawthon, Esquire.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, my name is George Cawthon. I'm an attorney with Nelson Mullins. I'm the chair of the Columbia Homeless Court Committee. We act as a support group to the Homeless Court. We've been operational now 2.5 years. For the last 12 months, I'd like to report that we've had 45 applications, 45 homeless people that have gone through the court and who've graduated. Almost half of them are now permanently housed, no longer homeless. A lot of these people have gotten their criminal charges removed. They've been put in a position where they can go back to work, and it's been a great success. I think I've told you Charleston's modeling theirs after ours, and Atlanta's looking at starting one. The success of this program has been responsible for 4 different groups of people. Craig Curry, Transitions, where we hold court, has been very accommodating, sends us a lot of the referrals that we have. Judge Dana Turner, who runs the court itself, does a great job, very moving. I urge you to come to court sometime, listen to her speech, makes you want to tear up. After each hearing, people applaud because they're so happy with the results of the hearing. The public defender, Dino Porneras, has been a great aid to this program. But one of the most important people has been Daniel Coble, assistant solicitor, who unfortunately has now been promoted to judge and is leaving our court. I've been very concerned about the integrity of our court with losing Daniel because he's been such an integral part of that. So I'm sad to report that we're losing Daniel, but we're getting Joe Berry in his place. So hopefully he'll step up and do as much as Daniel's been. So this is kind of a farewell to Daniel Coble.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I have a proclamation. Whereas in November 2013, Councilwoman Tamika Isaac Devine approached the City of Columbia Municipal Court, Judge Dana Turner, about creating a Columbia Homeless Court. And whereas as the Columbia Homeless Court Committee was being formed, Daniel Coble was one of the first to serve on such committee. And whereas Daniel Coble was serving as an assistant solicitor at the Fifth Circuit Solicitor's Office, was assigned by Solicitor Dan Johnson to be the primary prosecutor for the Columbia Homeless Court. And whereas in that capacity, over the past 3.5 years, he took a major role in forming and drafting a policy of the Columbia Homeless Court, assisting the curation of the Homeless Court brochure. He organized a committee of healthcare professionals to address the chronically homeless and seeking solutions for their recovery, and served as an available consultant to the creation of the Charleston Homeless Court. And whereas the City of Columbia, having been informed that Daniel Coble has been appointed as a magistrate judge for Richland County, will no longer be able to serve as prosecutor for the Columbia Homeless Court. Now, therefore, that the City of Columbia expresses its appreciation of Daniel Coble for service above and beyond his assigned duties in working on the creation of the Columbia Homeless Court. Be it further that the City of Columbia designates July 18th, 2017 as Daniel Coble Day in Columbia.
I better go. Yeah, stand here so you don't have to see my drawers on. It makes him look taller. Push that up. Congratulations. Good to see you.
Ms. Devine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did want to say my personal thank you to Daniel. I remember when we were getting started and, had to work out some things and make sure that every aspect was at the table. And I remember George inviting us to have lunch to kind of hash out some stuff. And Daniel always came in not with attitude of this is the way we want it no matter what. He always looked at a way to make it work out. And so I'm happy and proud of him to be going to be a magistrate and affecting justice countywide, but we're certainly going to miss him at the homeless court. And I also just wanted to, definitely thank Craig and Dana and Dino in his absence, because this is clearly as a team. I know we've recognized a couple people as part of this, but this is clearly a team. And then he always wants to make sure everybody else is recognized, but I cannot recognize George enough of his leadership in getting this done from the Nelson Mullins perspective, and making sure that we have this up and running. And then George has even gone down to Charleston to help them with their setup and everything. So this has just been phenomenal. And then also in his absence, also William Hubbard. When we first came up with this idea, I knew ABA had some guidelines for this, and William was the ABA president at the time, and I called him and I gave him the idea, and he said, anything you need, the ABA's resources are there. And so George and the ABA got together and made sure we had this. So that if George, if you would make sure that William also knows of our appreciation. But I just thank you all so much, because this has really been a great project, and it's certainly a model for not just around the state, but around the country. And I think that we are really affecting lives by really giving those folks who are less fortunate and might have a brush with the law an opportunity not only to get their criminal background together, but also give them another opportunity to come back into the mainstream. So I thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Mr. Duval.
I'd like to leave the chair for about a 20-minute leave of absence, and I'd like to leave my appointments to the committees with Tamika in case I don't get back and before y'all vote.
Yes, sir.
Be right back.
All right. Thank you. Madam City Manager. Yes, ma'am.
Item 35, Fast Forward Update, Ms. Dee Albritton, Executive Director.
Just want to thank everybody for your continued support and remind you that we are turning 19, which is kind of frightening to me. That means something happens at 20, right? We had some big highlights this year, and I just want to kind of go over a few of those with you. We placed 112 homeless veterans into employment. Some of them we had to get a couple of jobs for because the first one didn't stick, but 112 were placed. We also worked with 50 veterans who are at risk of or experiencing homelessness that didn't qualify for our big federal grant. So those are people who just didn't qualify for some obscure little reason, like perhaps they didn't quite have their eviction notice left yet, but they were about to become homeless. I think one of the most exciting things that keeps happening for us is we keep getting calls from folks who came through in 2010, 2011, dropping by to see us and saying hi, and oh, by the way, 12 of them are now homeowners. Most of those right here in Columbia, so they've gone from not having a home to owning their own home. In fact, I had a person come by today who had just bought his first car in 15 years and came by to us first so he could show us the keys and show us the car. He paid $1,000 cash for it, and he was very proud. And we were very excited for him because he had been incarcerated for 17 years until 4 months ago. Wow. And he now has an apartment, he has a job, he's finishing a construction course in school. So it's really possible for folks to make that total turnaround. I think y'all remember Jessie, who was one of the first female veterans we worked with, and she's owned her house since 2010. So. 30 adults from Babcock Center and Aldersgate are coming to us weekly still to learn some new skills. And we've added some things to our program for kids and for these special friends of ours. Understanding that financial literacy is so important, we were able to find some really amazing software for financial literacy that goes from kindergarten all the way up. So we have folks who are actually working on financial literacy from Babcock and Aldersgate, and also from some of our preschool programs and also our youth programs. We've worked with, through some funding from Women in Philanthropy, 20 women from Family Shelter, and helping them with job skills. One of them is graduating from the City Work It Up program this month. So we have also just become, it's so hot off the presses that we signed up the first 2 kids today. We're working with the Public Defender's Youth Reentry Program on job skills and getting skills up to be able to go to college, to maybe go to college and finish high school. So it's so new. Like I said, we just did the first 2 today, but we're really excited about the possibilities with that. We worked all year with City of Columbia Parks and Rec seniors who came to visit and learn, and also the Columbia Housing Authority. So I'd like to do a short commercial for a city program. I don't know if anybody's been involved with the community development program, Speak Outs, but I went to my first one 3 months ago and was really excited and impressed with what's happening. It's a great way for people to actually, it's about affordable housing and the issues around it. So next Thursday morning at the Empowerment Zone Suites, there's another one. And I really really encourage everyone to participate if you can, because you're really hearing from the community and hearing what issues there are, and it's a great way for all of us to embrace some of what the city's doing while we have an opportunity to say what's going on. So really excited, and thank you for your support as always. It's been 19 years seems like yesterday, and then it seems like about 42 years ago when I saw Daniel Coble get that award. So I think he was like, dare I say Daniel was in elementary school, perhaps, maybe younger. So thank you again for everything.
Thanks, Dee.
Thank you, Dee.
Do you have a question? Dee, I have a question just about the financial literacy software. We're actually, Gloria and I are working with a pilot that we're going to be doing with Watkins Nance this fall, and I was just wondering, the software you have, is that someone has to come to Fast Forward to use it, or would we be able to?
Cloud-based.
Okay.
And since you're doing that, we also had, you know, every once in a while the vendor likes you and you get something special. So we had ordered so much software from this one vendor that they gave us hundreds of extra copies of cloud-based keyboarding software for kids. So I talked to Randy Davis when I came in, but if there's some children that you know of that want to work on those skills, please let us know, because I literally have several hundred licenses.
Okay. All right, we'll get with you on that. That would be a good component to this program that we're working on.
Who should I get in touch with?
Ron, Gloria, just put her, Gloria, get with Gloria, and then she'll connect you.
All right, thank you.
I think we do have a good reason to give thanks and appreciate what you're doing with Fast Forward. Over the years that I've visited, you've been serving people who have different challenges, and they range anywhere from transportation, developmental challenges, work skills development, and that sort of thing. But the bottom line has always been that you've been able to come back to council and give an account, one, for the dollars, and two, for the performance of the program in general, and the numbers have spoken for themselves. So I think we can account for a number of people in this city who are gainfully employed now that could not, for whatever reason, show success in other type projects and programs. So I think it's a decent safety net. There are some folks that do have challenges. They do enroll or become a part of certain programs and projects, but when they hit that wall or where there's a glitch, they have nowhere else to go, and I think that's one of the roles of this project. So we appreciate it.
Thank you. I can also say that I've noticed how much better the economy is doing in Columbia when employers call me now and say they have 50 or 60 jobs, and do I have enough people for them, instead of saying we have 2 openings. So it's been real exciting. I mean, there are so many jobs in Columbia right now. It is amazing, the number, and how many businesses are really growing. So a lot to be said for Columbia in this.
Thank you, Dee. Thank you so much, Dee. Thank you. All right. All right, so I'm going to step out on, 36, and what else?
37.
36, 37, all right.
Okay. Madam City Manager?
Yes, ma'am. We will, got 3 minutes, Ms. Devine.
Oh, we gotta wait. Okay. Well then.
Taking it.
I was gonna say, well, tell him to come back in. We can do the appointments, can't we? Can we jump and do these appointments real quick?
What you got?
That's who Howard wants. Did somebody tell him to come back in? Okay, Shanique, can you come up? Let's go ahead and get going on the appointments. She's a reappointment. It's not 7 o'clock yet, so let's do the appointments.
I guess I'm saying, I didn't think we noticed for 7. I thought we just noticed 6 p.m. I thought we just
I
noticed
think it's a
6
regular
p.m.
7. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a regular, so
All right.
public hearing.
Sounds good to me.
So we can start with,
All right, just pretty quick.
did we do the resolutions, or what are we?
We can,
Let's just, she's up here, why don't we do the appointments?
Central Midlands move the nomination of Bob Liming and John Ted Creech.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, we have one reappointment we're going to hold to the next meeting, resolving some policy issues at the COG. A fantastic appointment is Sean Epps. All right, we're going to take that next time. All right? Okay. Move the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Rickerman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye.
Citizen Advisory Committee, I think the chief had some recommendations.
What
He has 3 recommendations.
what are they?
Were they?
Kimberly Castell, John Martin, and Don Polite.
All right. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. This is
All right, Tuesday.
Castell, Polite, and Martin. Move the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Rickerman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye. How many on tree appearance open? Just one
I've
opening?
got one I'm going to recommend.
3.
3, okay. Let's make one motion. Who you have, Mr. Rickerman?
We
Then we have Karen Satana.
Satana, yeah.
Robert Hart.
Okay, and is there a third? Ms. Scott?
That's fine.
That's fine.
That's fine.
I didn't have a third.
I'm just very sensitive to the
District
lack of
three.
District 3 representation, just generally.
Yeah.
So let's move. Yeah, so Hart, Satana, and Scott.
Second.
Any discussion? That was a motion, Madam Clerk. Move the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Rickerman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye. Ms. Devine?
For the Midlands Convention and Sports and Tourism, I would move the appointment of Sam Johnson and John Katz and the reappointment of Janice Marshall.
So move.
All right, any discussion? I will vote for everyone except for Mr. Johnson. Move the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Leroy Johnson.
Mr. Rickerman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye.
TPAC,
How many slots are there in TPAC?
Just one.
just one.
Just one. Okay.
I move the appointment of Mr. Lee Mashburn.
All right, so a second?
So moved.
Any discussion? We'll move the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Rickerman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye.
Thank you.
We are now at 7 o'clock. All right, Ms. Hampton, number, what's it, 50?
36.
We're at 36.
36, yeah.
Where are we?
These first few this is an annexation, comprehensive map amendment, and zoning map amendment at 160 and 169 Gulfview Bend and 190 Gulfview Bend. This is in the Wood Creek Farms area.
All right.
Request to annex assigned land use classification of UER1 and assign a zoning of PUDR.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor or against number 36? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
So moved.
Been moved by Mr. Davis, seconded by Mr. Rickerman. Any discussion? If not, if the clerk will read the roll.
Mr. Rickerman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
A similar annexation, comprehensive plan and zoning map amendment at 194 through 216 Gulfview Bend, and 312 through 374 Turnwall Lane. A request to annex assigned land use of UER 1 and PUDR zoning district.
All right. Is there anybody here to speak for or against number 37? Seeing none, is there a motion? There's moved by Mr. Rickman. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman McDowell. Is there any discussion? If not, if the clerk would read the roll.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Ms. Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
We are moving out of the Wood Creek Farm ones at this point. We're moving out of the Wood Creek Farms.
Okay, 38. Ms. Daniels is going to let the mayor know.
Shall I
Go ahead,
continue?
though.
An annexation comprehensive and zoning map amendment at 4801 Broad River Road, a request to annex and assign a land use classification of community activity corridor, AC2, and a zoning of C2.
Is anyone here to speak in favor of or against this one? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Move the previous question. Call the roll.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Ms. Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis, Mayor Benjamin.
Aye.
At 7645 Garner's Ferry Road, a request to annex and assign a land use classification of UE MR and assign a zoning of RG2.
Is anyone here to speak in favor of or against this item? Seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Move the previous question. Call the roll.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Yes.
Ms. Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye.
For number 40, you have both a resolution, because it's city-owned property, and an ordinance to annex 1701 Busby Street, assign a land use classification of UCR1 and a zoning of RG2.
All right. Is anyone here to speak in favor of or against this? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Any discussion? I'm sorry, is there a second? Any discussion? Move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell.
Yes.
Ms. Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye.
At 2429 and next to 2429 McKinley Street, we have a request to annex and assign the land use classification of UCR1 and a zoning of C1.
All right. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Do we need to have two votes, or is it just resolution, or do we do both of those votes on the last item? You said one was a resolution and the annexation, or?
I'm under the assumption that we can take that vote for both the resolution and the ordinance, unless I'm given other legal advice.
So was that?
Yes.
That was a gentle nod, yes. From afar, it was just a little bit, but I saw it.
So in 40, let's just take them up. We voted on the annexation on the ordinance. Let's do the resolution.
Or let's say you did the resolution first.
Okay, we did the resolution. I apologize.
Thank you.
How about we just take them both up independently again? Move approval of the resolution 2017-61. Is there?
Second.
All right. Move the previous question. Call the roll.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell.
Yes.
Ms. Devine,
Aye.
Mr. Davis,
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. Move approval of ordinance number 2017-056. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell.
Aye.
Ms. Devine.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. Thank you. All right.
Certainly, thank you. Going back to 2429 and next to 2429 McKinley Street
Okay.
to annex.
And no one's here to speak in favor of or against that item, and no one's signed up to speak. Any discussion? I believe we have to have a motion. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion? Move the previous question. The clerk call the roll.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell.
Yes.
Mr. Duval.
Aye.
Ms. Devine.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye.
803 Skyland Drive, a request to annex and assign a land use classification of UER1 and a zoning classification of RS1.
All right, is there anyone to speak in favor of or against this item?
Can you come to the podium?
Come on up, please. Now that, yeah.
I heard it. She
Does
asked what it actually meant, so I'll repeat it for you. This means that the property will be annexed into the city of Columbia, just this particular property. Okay, so it's not changing that it's residential or commercial? Not at all, ma'am. Yeah, it stays it is single-family residential is the zoning classification, certainly.
All right. right, any other discussion?
Yeah, y'all need to vote.
Need a motion.
I'm sorry, is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? Further discussion? Move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rickman,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Ms. Devine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye.
Now moving into a zoning map amendment at 2314 Pinehurst Road. This is a request to rezone the parcel from RS2 to RG2. This is to facilitate a development proposal, and we do have folks here if you needed additional information.
Yeah, we have several preponderance of the folks who signed up wanting to speak to this item. And we can just take them in order if that's all right. All right, Ms. Brenda Oliver.
Good evening.
Hey, Brenda.
I serve as president of the Pinehurst Community Neighborhood Association, have been so for about 12, 14 years. This was a contentious matter for us, but we think we've got a compromise worked out. The only sticking point is that we were promised covenants to be tied to the land deeds to protect the community. The community was jarred by this whole process, and in good faith, we want the covenants presented as part of the deal. And as such, we appointed a committee to look over this development, and I'm going to let the two co-chairs speak, Dr. Rush Oliver and Mr. Ronald Taylor. And my only issue is with the covenants.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Hey, Rush.
I'm Rush Oliver, and a member of Pinehurst Community. And what I'm going to do right now is to actually read the motion for action that was done at the request of TN Development Corporation. And the motion from a meeting February 23rd, 2017. I move that we authorize a letter from Pinehurst Neighborhood Council to TN Development Corporation in support of their request for a zoning change from, which I thought was RS1 to RG2, for the senior living facility they proposed for 2314 Pinehurst. The letter of endorsement is contingent on the agreement of TN Development Corporation to bind itself through legal covenants that ensure the project will be for a senior living community with minimum tenancy age of 62 years. There will be up to a maximum of 26 structures. All units will be 1 or 2 bedrooms. The maximum number of residents will be 105 people, and that there would be no residential entrance or exit to Burns Drive. And then covenants must be legally attached to all deeds of property associated with the development, openly acknowledged by TN Development Corporation, and be legally compelling to TN Development Corporation during all subsequent planning, design, construction, and management processes. And this was the motion that was passed in open meeting. And it is my understanding at this date there are no covenants attached to these properties. There is not an issue of trust. The issue is that community has, and as recognized by this council and this city, the community has a right to land use, and that a change in land use does involve, in this case, removing restrictions that, is that my time? The restrictions that were aware of by TN Development Corporation, and that they should not be given that relief of restrictions unless they're willing to provide covenants to support the community agreement.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Oliver.
afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Councilperson, Manager Wilson. My name is Ronald Taylor, and I live at 2220 Margaret Street. I apologize for not, I had to drive truck today, so I didn't have a chance to put on a dress shirt. But Pinehurst knows anything can happen. Funding can go away, lack of funding can change design, but most concerning, ownership may change. Any of these changes leaves Pinehurst with no say in what happens to our neighborhood, because once zoning is changed, the owners can do anything they want without any input to the neighborhood or to our community. In our February 23rd, 2017 meeting, we had 7 surrounding neighborhood representatives. We're talking about from Carl Frederick all the way around to Middleburg, back around to Midland at our meeting, at that 23rd meeting, and we approved the motion that Dr. Oliver just presented to you. After we approved that motion in that February 23rd meeting, our president gave a letter of approval based on that motion. TN committed to that motion, yet we have no covenants. Anything can happen. So we asked council to defer this action until the covenants are recorded, because we realize anything can happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. Ms. Clarkson? Ms. Elaine Clarkson, I'm sorry. I'm speaking for the record, not to you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Council, for allowing me to speak. I live in Pinehurst also. I live at 14 Delane Drive, and the property on Pinehurst is right behind my house. It is literally in my backyard. So nobody wants this property developed more than I do. The concern that I have is that, as Dr. Oliver and Ronald Taylor just said, we entered into an agreement with TN Development Corporation. They actually presented us with a memorandum of understanding, and it outlined the specifics of the covenant. They have not provided us with that covenant, and as a matter of fact, we no longer even have a memorandum of understanding because they put an expiration clause in that MOU, and it has expired. So if you pass this rezoning amendment now, it will really put us in a worse position than we were in the beginning. We will actually have no leverage and no say-so over any multifamily development that might go in that place. If, let's say that TN decides, I mean, anything could happen, as Ron said. They could decide all of a sudden, well, the senior living is really not economically feasible for us. They may decide they don't want to do that. Or they may decide, God forbid, to just sell the property to another developer. And we will really be at the mercy of whoever owns that property. We won't have any leverage, which we had initially. So again, basically, we're asking that you at least postpone acting on this until TN Development has lived up to their end of the agreement, which they have not done, and provide us with this covenant so that we can have some say-so as to how this land is used. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Does everyone have, I believe, signed up to speak on, I'm sorry, that was not right. Mr. Hank Rabinowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, City Council. I live in Midlands Terrace, which is adjacent to the Pinehurst neighborhood. I have worked with the Pinehurst Neighborhood Association, the Olivers, Mr. Taylor, in trying to craft a good project. Many months working with TN Development, we feel like we have a project that we both can stand behind. Unfortunately, we do not have the covenants legally tied to the deeds. In these neighborhoods around Columbia, you have homeowners who spent their life building up these neighborhoods. We want to be good citizens and good neighbors. We are not against this project. We are simply asking for the protection so that they will honor their word. As of this point, they have not. We stand with Pinehurst requesting that you postpone this till TN Development keeps their word. We have honored in good, we have negotiated in good faith. We expect the same. We do expect that protection. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, and last speaker on this issue is Ms. Rebecca Parmy.
Good evening. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. My name is Rebecca Parms, and I'm a member of the Pinehurst community as well. I actually live on Schoolhouse Road, and I am a senior citizen as well. I am age 66, and I'm here today to oppose this. And the reason why is I live in the community, and from what I observe, I walk in the community every day. I observe great population density, so I'm very concerned. I do not think it's a good idea to put this project in place. There is flooding on Schoolhouse Road. Even when it rained today, flooding in the streets. I don't see where there's water runoff for Schoolhouse at all. So minor rain, flooding in the streets. That would mean the impact on the neighborhood with additional residents would be great and a havoc, in my opinion. And the water quality is very, very poor in the community, and I don't think that we should put in new residents until that problem is corrected, as well as the sewer right there on Schoolhouse Road and Pinehurst. At that intersection, just a few months ago, tape was put up because there was actual raw sewage coming up, flooding into the street, and that has not been repaired. I think that it would be a travesty on the community and our residents to put such a project in place without having fixed anything. Also, at the Pinehurst Center, children come and go frequently. The bus comes and stops right there at that intersection and lets off children. So it'll be a hazard to have more traffic. In addition, their parking at the community center is not adequate. So people park along the street there, and there's not enough room on Pinehurst for them to adequately park. So they park half on the sidewalk, half in the street, and it is a traffic hazard, especially when the men play basketball in the evening, which is very, very frequently. The parking lot there at Pinehurst Community is very small and not adequate to accommodate the interest. Also, additionally, aesthetically, I think it would be more creative to use it as a community garden. We do not need any mortar and brick. Science tells us that one of the reasons why we have so much flooding in our communities is because there's no water drain off. Just concrete and roads, and the land, the earth is not present, and so the water just flows everywhere. And many of those homes in that area have flooded, and the people are living in flooded conditions inside their house because there's not adequate community funding for repairs of the damage to their homes from 2015 flood. And I think that's a travesty as well. I think that we should direct our interests in helping the people who are already there, living in the community and struggling. Piggly Wiggly closed. It's a food desert. People do not have food where they can go and buy quality vegetables and fruits. So I see my neighbors walking every day, constantly, up Schoolhouse Road, going to Dollar General to get their groceries. And usually it's like bread, something to drink sweet, a candy bar, Yes. We need to give the people a place where they can buy fruits and vegetables, live in peace and harmony with nature, have a community garden with grass, water flowing, something beautiful to see, and provide health and nutrition for our citizens that are dying of diabetes, high strokes, and all those problems. Let's help our community. Thank you.
Is anyone else here speaking in favor of or against this? Anthony.
Good afternoon, City Council, Mayor. I am Anthony Lawrence with Brownstone. We've been working with TN Development for a number of years in preparing this project for where we are today. Real briefly, just to give you some additional information, it has been a pleasure working with the Pinehurst community. The number of community meetings we've had with them. As you've heard earlier, this project started out with highly significant more density than what we have now. But because of the citizens' input, because of their concerns, it's been reduced to only be 28 units as opposed to the 52 that was established initially. The demographic of the entire development was changed from just being apartments to more neighborhood-friendly and neighborhood-sensitive residences. In addition to that, the MOU was mentioned. TN Development put that in place as another reassurance that we would or they would follow what the community is asking. So one of the aspects of having a covenant put in place is having planning decisions made, having zoning decisions made. That becomes a part of what the covenants will be. So your decision tonight will then fold into what TN will eventually file. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other input from citizens? Council? Is there a motion and or some discussion prior to? Mr. McDowell? Certainly am. Make sure get your microphone on there.
Let me thank each of you for being here tonight and, of course, expressing what's best for our community. We know the community and the developer have come to an agreement that covenants should be filed as a matter of record. However, council needs, in my estimation, and I think in council's estimation, some time to discuss how best to get this done and taken care of. What we'd like to do is, what I'd like to offer tonight is that we approve the rezoning on the first reading until the legal issues are resolved and it's brought back for a second reading.
I'll second that motion.
So for clarification's purposes, all the other issues regarding the covenants that have been negotiated with the neighbors and all the parties, I mean, I will say this, it's wonderful to have everybody on the same page, so we've got to make sure that's memorialized in a way that's clear. And of course, we had a chance to discuss this a little bit amongst ourselves. Keep it moving forward, but making it clear that we are not going to take it up for second reading until those issues have been resolved and to the satisfaction of the neighbors. All right? All right.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could add, I mean, in our discussion, there is no disagreement regarding the covenants. TN is willing to do them. They actually have them drafted. We've got to work out making sure that we've got it in place that meets their legal attorneys, or their attorneys' legal preference, as well as, gives you all a comfort. So I know that where Michael is, I know there was some discussion regarding, living up to their end. There's not been any indication that they are not going to do that. We just need to make sure between first and second reading, all of that is in place.
Right. So Just, Madam City Manager, we don't want this back on the agenda until those covenants or the issues have been resolved. So we need those resolved before this comes back to us. All right?
And of course, what was previously discussed with Michael, TN has agreed to do exactly what you say you're going to do.
All right.
Move to the previous question.
All right. All right. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rickerman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye. And it'd be in interest, everyone's interest to see this move forward post haste. So let's get those resolved. Let's dialogue with the community, make sure it meets everyone's standards, and let's get it back before City Manager ASAP. All right. All right. Thank you.
One more item, Krista?
Yes, I'm going to turn this over. This is a comprehensive plan amendment for the South Main. I'm going to turn this over to John Fellow.
Is this the last thing on the agenda? Couple of resolutions.
We didn't do the,
Couple of resolutions.
yeah.
Right, 15, 51? Oh, we got all these. I'm sorry. I missed all these. I apologize. Okay. Yes, sir.
This is South Main.
Says a lot.
Good evening. There we go. This particular plan has been a project for about 3/4 of a year. We have been working on this with the property owners down on South Main, south of the Capitol, as well as USC, and the Sasaki consulting firm for this particular project. It's a very small area plan. On the screen, you can see that the boundaries of it are essentially Pendleton and Blossom, and then Assembly and Sumter. The plan, we have currently the land use plan has 2 land use classifications, and it has a number of different zoning classifications that have everywhere from C4 to C1, some PUDs, and some different classifications. So that creates some variety within the regulations. And the intent of this particular project was to bring the stakeholders together and really look at this particular area that actually has not seen that much development in the number of years. And it is it's an area that actually is bordered by the central part of the campus, the Inna Vista area. We have the Vista, we have the State Capitol Complex, all within this area. And so all those different areas kind of merge into this particular component. So we had public outreach in October, as well as November and January, with property owners, tenants, state representatives, as well as the university. We averaged about 20+ people each meeting. They varied over time of who was actually in attendance at those public meetings. As you can see in this particular area, it's within a 5-minute walk with anywhere within the district, and within a 10-minute walk of some major components of the downtown area. The historical context for this particular plan, this is one of those areas in Columbia that we've actually studied for a long time. It goes all the way back to just after 1900. One of the first plans for Columbia actually looked at this area that was sponsored by a business group. And here we are looking at it again. And so we did analysis in terms of ownership and the existing primary land uses that are currently on the properties.
Can you go back to the ownership, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
So just for a description for those in the audience, the red is properties owned by USC. The blue, the lighter blue, is properties owned by the USC Foundation. The yellow or kind of tan color is privately owned property. And then the darker blue are properties that are owned by the state of South Carolina. And then there is one parcel right off of Pendleton that's actually owned by the utility company.
How many of the private property owners were involved in this? And do we have letters of support from those folks?
We have letters of support from USC and from the state. I do not have individual letters of support from all the individual properties. We had a couple of the property owners. Let let me think here. From a few of the blocks, we had some people on Assembly Street. We did have a really good turnout in terms of some of the tenants, but I'd say probably at least a quarter of the property owners attended at one point, but they were invited to each of the meetings.
At least the meetings I attended had some pretty significant property and business owner involvement and participation.
Tenants, you know, and no offense, tenants don't carry. It needs to be the property owners that have the say. Tenants pay rent; they don't own the property.
No, the meeting I attended had property owners, some long-standing property owners as well.
By making this change, who will have the oversight for it?
Who will have the oversight? In terms of the land use plan, so the way it works, the land use plan is a policy document that's adopted by City Council, and then it is essentially the city staff responsibility to implement the different components of this project where applicable, if it is a city type element, if it's an element that is not a city function, if it's a DOT function or the state of South Carolina function, then it would rely on those particular entities to implement those components. So if it's a utility issue, it would be the city. If it's something like a policy document like changing the zoning, that would fall to Planning and Development Services. So various elements of staff and entities for implementation.
I unfortunately didn't have the history of this, so I'm having to play catch up here.
Well, let me move through a couple more slides off of this, and maybe some of those slides will shed some more light on the project. So the primary land uses on this particular show, the retail spaces, academic spaces, residential, restaurants, a few religious land uses also on within the study area. The land cover, there's a summary of the land cover in terms of how much of the land is actually being used for building footprints versus parking lots. And you'll see through that there's quite a lot of parking within the area. And then there is some green space, particularly adjacent to some of the academic buildings within the area. So this is just a little summary of those 3 blocks on the northern part of the study area. Essentially, there's about 58% of the land is dedicated to parking and 23% to buildings, and then 12% for circulation, which would be the road right-of-way, and then there's about 7% for green space within that area. It's just a representative example. So the plan has a 3-dimensional drawings that look at the existing conditions of the plan, and so this drawing shows you the 3-dimensional buildings as well as the gray areas represent parking, and then you can see some of the significant green spaces within the area and adjacent. The plan also looks at a long-range vision. It's an illustrative drawing. There's lots of buildings on there with lots of ins and outs. Those are just representative of potential development, but it does show where future development could occur within this particular area in terms of increasing density, in terms of increasing retail opportunities, those types of things. The major element is essentially looking at trying to put the parking interior to the blocks, very similar to what happens over in Inna Vista, and then having the more active uses facing the various streets.
I participated in some of the earliest discussions, and I've heard only pretty significant support. I did get an email today from Historic Columbia about some of the mid-century modern buildings, and the plan not at all referencing any adaptive reuse of specifically the Burns Building and Cornell Arms. Can you speak to that to some degree?
Sure, I think I can, and later on there's a few other people who want to make some comments, and they might be able to also. Essentially, Sasaki did an illustrative drawing. They showed existing buildings in white, and through that illustration process, there were some buildings that were not depicted in that, but I'll leave that for a few comments a little bit forward.
Buildings, existing buildings that are not shown at all?
There are some buildings that are currently existing that are not shown in that particular drawing for illustrative purposes. Okay. As I mentioned, none of these specific things would They represent represent a potential, but like any kind of project like this, when you represent it, you could represent it with many different drawings of different scenarios, and this is just one scenario.
Okay.
Essentially, Main Street, the main corridor of this particular area, the idea is to actually make it much more interactive and more of a public space for people, and actually doing a road diet on the particular Main Street. So the key ideas are within the Innovista area. You'll see Green Street, so connecting that Green Street. Right now, Green Street, for instance, has some bike facilities in Innovista over by campus, but then there's this disconnect in that particular area. Also looking at College Street as a transit plaza. So the buses that currently idle in front of the Horseshoe would go on to College Street, and there would be an actual street that would be constructed for both people to board and unboard from the buses in a safe place, so all that circulation and all those buses all are kind of in one area. And that would include the shuttle services to some of the residences within the city that have those facilities. Also looking at number 3, which is Main Street, which I'll get to in a little bit more, which is a lane reduction in that particular area. And then, as I mentioned, parking internal to the blocks. And so Main Street, I'll dive a little bit into Main Street. It's part of the meat of the plan, is the existing street right-of-way is 100 feet, and it has 5 travel lanes, 2 lanes of parking, and then it has essentially sidewalks and some street trees. The proposed version would be to increase the amount of space for pedestrians, actually to install a outdoor dining area adjacent to the street facades, add bike facilities, and then reduce the lane widths to reduce the lanes to 2 lanes instead of the 5, and then maintain the on-street parking for all the blocks except for one particular block next to some of the academic buildings. And then this would be an example of Main Street between College and Green, which is very similar to the one I just talked about. This would be the one between nearest where the old law school is. This would be a street that would not have parking on it as proposed. And then this is an example of the transit plaza. So there's lots of circulation for pedestrians, for boarding and waiting, as well as travel lanes for the transit buses to circulate through the right-of-way. And then the plan also looks at Green Street and Divine Street as cross-sections for improvements. It looks at the public realm of essentially Green Street as well as a college. The idea of College is to continue that green landscape of the Horseshoe through the district, and then Green Street to continue the green area that's near the library, as well as towards Innovista and Foundation Square. And so again, that's the kind of the long-range vision as it's illustrated as one scenario. And then there's a series of recommendations that include many of the recommendations fit into the classification of improvements in terms of the infrastructure of Main Street and some of the side streets, as well as modifications of the land use through the adoption of this plan, and then future zoning changes, which would be integrated into the overall zoning process that's currently underway here in the city. So that's a quick summary. Derek Huggins from the university is here, and he'd like to say just a few words about the project.
Derek Huggins, how are you, my friend?
Yes, sir. How you doing, sir?
All right.
Well, I just wanted to be brief. Derek Gruner, a university architect, going to talk a little bit more about the project, but I did want to express my thanks to the mayor and the staff for helping us go through this process. It was very inclusive. We did talk to several landowners. They did attend, but we'll be able to give you a little bit more information with Derek's presentation. But being brief, I just want to tell you how much we really appreciate staff guiding us through this whole project.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. I'm Derek Gruner. I serve the university as the university staff architect, and we're aware that the area plan and some of its long-range vision illustrations have created some concern about the fate of individual buildings in the district. What I'd like to try to underscore is that while the area plan is pretty prescriptive when it comes to streetscaping, you saw the dimensions on the roadways, et cetera, there is nothing in the plan that dictates the fate of any individual buildings. It's really just an artist's conception about what a mid-rise district might evolve into at some point in the future. I would also submit that the university is a steward of more than 30 historic buildings, and whenever we go to either make an addition, renovate, or demolish a building, it comes after an exhaustive consideration and working with the city's preservation office, Historic Columbia, Department of Archives and History, and any effect that this plan might have on some of our existing buildings in the future would be subject to that exhaustive research that we do. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Derek. All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, hey, Dan.
Just briefly, thank you, Council. I just wanted to respond to Councilman Rickman's question about the involvement of the landowners. I've got some specific data on that for you. I'm an attorney, by the way, in town who kind of helped coordinate the public meetings, and so I kind of kept track of who attended. There are actually 45 parcels in the district, but only 26 landowners. Obviously, that means multiple parcels are owned by individual landowners. Of those 26 landowners, 13 attended one or more of the public meetings. And then, of course, that doesn't include like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is obviously an out-of-town entity, and any number of other out-of-town entities. But I also spoke with the real estate representative for Wells Fargo, the Irvin family that owns the Hunter-Gatherer building, the Baptist Campus Ministry folks who weren't able to attend, but I had an extensive conversation with them, and then a gentleman named Ford Elliott who owns the building that Immaculate Consumption is in. And so the total of folks that we spoke with or attended were 17 out of the 26 landowners. And so I felt like that was pretty good involvement for such a small area. And so I just wanted to be responsive to your question.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Duval, then Mr. Rickman.
When I was with the Columbia Tree and Appearance Commission, we worked on this area of South Main Street. We didn't have the horsepower of the university behind us at that time, so we didn't get our project off the ground, but we wanted to do essentially what has been mentioned in this plan. I think that South Main Street from the back of the State House to Blossom Street is an untapped resource for the city of Columbia, and if we can get it designed and implemented properly, it's going to be a real jewel for the city. John, I just wanted to know, are you going to call this the back porch?
I had an incredibly great comeback for that. I won't keep it to myself, however. All right. Don't answer that, John. Okay. What else we got? Mr. Rickman.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm not sold yet. I'd like to have the opportunity to spend a little more time here. This seems to be a little more university-driven and less private. And no offense to the university, but we need to have a clear balance between the university's expansion and the city's expansion, both from a tax base and the community involvement. And, I'll be honest, I'm not sold that we're there yet. I'd like to have this held until we can have some more in-depth conversation on this. The recommendations go into it being Innovista's design guidelines. This is not what I see as a future. At this point, it's more university-driven, and so I think for our community's sake, we need to have some more discussion. We need to understand the full extent and how this is going to move forward, how that affects us in multiple ways, including property tax, traffic flows, the integration. I saw Green Street and several other things now becoming part of the Greenway. And at this point, I'm not inclined to support it as presented until we can get some more detail. And I'd like to have some more dialogue with those property owners to understand their involvement in this process.
Mr. Huggins?
Well, Councilman, when we started this process, I want you to know that the state was involved as far as Representative Smith and Senator was there too. And this is not a USC project. Just like Councilman Duvall said, you know, we have the coordination, we see an opportunity. We're looking at this parcel or these 4 blocks as a area for private development. But we know we have a jewel that has not been tapped. So we want to move forward with developing this project with all emphasis on private development, State House participation, USC participation, of course, and also the stakeholders that are there now to develop their streetscape. So I want to say that this is not a USC project. This is a project for the city. This is an effort to polish a jewel that we need to have polished.
The applicant for this is the City of Columbia. And so as a council member for this community, I respectfully request that it gets held until we have some more discussion.
Would you agree to a first reading and hold on second until you're satisfied? I'll take 2 readings.
Let's finish discussion first. Ms. Devine, then Mr. McDowell.
Well, I just wanted to add one thing that when I first started hearing this discussion and things, there were even, I guess, some communities that had some concerns, but I would say to USC's credit and staff, there were several community meetings where the neighborhoods got involved, they got some input, there were presentations, so I do think that there is a good bit of community support for the neighborhoods that are in this area for it. But I do know that, some of us have had the benefit of hearing about this for about a year, and Councilman Rickman hasn't. So I think that maybe if we could, I would agree with Howard. Do you think maybe we could pass first reading and then the next 2 weeks it'll be more than 2 weeks actually. Would it come back? Are we meeting on the 1st or not? I don't know.
Meet till the
5th. But is that enough time for you to then kind of meet with some folks and have
I would
some
agree to
questions
give it
answered?
first reading. I'm not going to agree to any kind of date for the second reading yet until we've had the opportunity to dig into this and have some more dialogue over it.
Okay.
Mr. McDowell, did you have something?
I'm fine. Is that a motion?
I'd so move.
Second.
All right, I do, Derek, and Dan, I do want to make sure that we address, at least in some type of wording, the concern raised by Historic Columbia, and obviously this would, I'm speaking more not plan, but looking at you, our staff, but looking to you guys, that suggests that at very least that these mid-century modern buildings should be considered for reuse, consistent with what you already said, Derek. Of course, we know the university is a steward of not just our cities, but some of our state's most historic properties. I dare say our nation's most historic properties. So you're good stewards of those. Let's. I'd like to see that reflected some way in the verbiage. So motion before us for first reading with the full understanding we're going to have some much more deep dive discussion with property owners before we take this up again, and we'll wait for direction from staff and council to make sure all the concerns are addressed. Move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rickman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr. Vine? Aye. Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye. All right. Madam Clerk.
Moving into a period of ordinances first reading, Mr. Mayor. Item 45, ordinance number 2017-059, granting an easement to Bell South Telecommunications along a portion of city property identified as Lexington County.
there a
TMS
motion?
number is outlined for traffic
Move
circle
adoption.
improvements.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rickman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Aye.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye.
Ordinance number 2017-060, granting water lines and sanitary sewer lines to the City of Columbia as public utilities and authorizing the reservation of water and sanitary sewer easements for the new City of Columbia water distribution and wastewater management facilities at 4011 West Beltline Boulevard.
When do we cut the ribbon there?
When it gets the hottest day of the year.
It looks fantastic.
It looks really good.
It looks fantastic. Yeah.
We're excited and
about it.
anxiously awaiting.
Move approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? With the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Rickerman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Ms. Devine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye.
Item 47, ordinance number 2017-062, authorizing the city manager to execute a quitclaim deed and any other documents necessary to consummate the transfer to Main and Gervais LLC of parcel 8A.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? With the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Rickerman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Ms. Devine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye.
Item 48, ordinance number 2017-063, amending the 1998 Code of Ordinances of the City of Columbia, South Carolina, Chapter 23, Utilities and Engineering, Article 5, Water and Sewer Rates, Section 23-145, installation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? With the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Rickerman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Ms. Devine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye.
Item 49, ordinance number 2017-065, amending the 1998 Code of Ordinances of the City of Columbia, South Carolina, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 3, Officers and Employees, Section 2117,
So
Director
moved.
of
Is there a
Engineering.
second?
Second.
Any discussion? With the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Rickerman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Ms. Devine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis? Mayor Benjamin?
Aye.
Hey, you're on ball tonight.
Okay, resolutions, item 50, resolution number R 2017-057, approval for release and abandonment of a portion of the City of Columbia's existing 10-foot water main easements along Richland County, TMS number as listed.
So move.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? With the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Rickerman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Ms. Devine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye.
Item 51, resolution number R 2017-067, encouraging Congress to create a reliable, predictable stream of resources to address deferred maintenance needs in America's national park system.
Second. Any discussion? With the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Rickerman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell? Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Ms. Devine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye.
Other matters, item 52, council is asked to approve the installation of additional street lighting on Pettigrew Drive, Woodrow Street, and Green Lawn Drive as requested by the Traffic Engineering Division.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? With the previous question, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Rickerman?
Yep. Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Ms. Devine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye.
I'm sorry, that just reminded me, and I guess Missy or somebody, if they could get someone to do, can we do a lighting assessment for Highland Park? We went to a community meeting there, I think last week or the week before, and there were a lot of issues and concerns regarding lighting in that community.
Is that
That's our,
different than the one that you requested, Mr. Duval? Is that different?
yeah, mine is in the
I think it is.
by Guilford.
Homestead and the other street that Mrs. McDaniel lived on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right. That's it. We have.
50, you did 53, right?
We did 53 earlier, yes. Any matters discussed during the work session, Madam City Manager? I don't believe so.
No, sir.
Miss-
We do need
sorry,
you
go ahead.
to take up.
I thought we did not do number 53, did we?
Yeah, we did 53 earlier. We did it earlier. We did it earlier.
Okay, well, I need to Just one question on that in terms of speed humps.
Still got your other.
Can staff tell me the status of the request for speed humps in Golden Acres? I just haven't had an update on it.
I will check on them, Councilman. I know that we've done the assessment.
Right.
I think there's two of
Did
them.
the assessment months and months ago.
I'll check on them where the status of them are.
Okay, that'll help.
And I've got Highland Park lighting assessment also.
Robert, while you're there, let's go over your laundry list for the week. How about that? I took notes.
All right.
You got Kilbourne traffic calming,
Got it?
Highland Park lighting assessment,
Got it.
Schoolhouse and Golden Acres speed humps.
Yes.
Thank you, Robert.
All right.
And then Mr. Duvall had one we discussed via email.
Homestead, we're taking care of.
Right.
South Edisto, I emailed Ms. McDaniels today.
Okay.
Got a response waiting on her.
Left turn signals on. Just while I had you.
Skip that one, okay?
Four's enough for right now. I'm just kidding. Mr. Mayor, I know you did want to raise the issue of the public meeting with County Council.
Thank you, Madam City Manager. Yes, we've had some great discussions with Chairwoman Joyce Dickerson at Richland County Council and with the County Administrator, Gerald Seals, and various members of Richland County Council looking at greater regional collaboration and cooperation. And we proposed the idea, and they're going to take it up, I believe, tonight as well, of having at least a series of joint meetings of both councils. We're going to join councils and move forward with hopefully a series of meetings to try and address some issues of mutual regional interest and concern. The proposal, I believe, is looking at the second week in September for the very first meeting, the second Tuesday in September, and we can work on a mutually agreeable location here in the city and county to work that out. So I'd make that a motion. I'll make that a motion. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Let's move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rickerman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye. Eager to meet. Thank you, Madam City Manager.
Yes.
All right. Any items for referral to committee or? Seeing none, we have at least one more citizen who signed up to speak, and that's Mr. Anthony Taylor.
How are you, ladies and gentlemen?
Mr. Taylor.
I come before this council tonight to request as to part of why I've been denied the right to franchise license at to serve dog treats at the dog park on Weeks Creek. It's a vendor where individuals need items for their pets, and it's a legal and legitimate business. But y'all got an ordinance that states on and about the facility that you cannot serve in a park or inside of a park. But see, my thing is that you could repeal this ordinance and take the on and about from our other ordinance, because the ordinance is really in denial of my rights to a fair opportunity of employment. And if you can allow vendors on the public streets of Main Street where they can serve the public, I should also have the same right to open up a vendor to serve the people for their pets that come into these pet parks, which is illegal and a legitimate business. I'm not asking for no special favors. All I'm asking for is my rights under the human rights, which I have a right to a decent means of living under the human rights. I have also, under the 14th Amendment, the council will have no authority to make laws or ordinances that go infringe upon the rights of a citizen. Now, by y'all having on and about within the park area, on the sidewalks, I mean, that's infringing upon my right as a citizen to open a vendor as they would a vendor on Main Street to sell hot dogs or whatever to the public. I'm asking for a public usage to serve the public in the same manner, but not on Main Street, but over on the sidewalks about Douglas Park on Wheat Street.
Thank you.
Which I feel is a fair and a legitimate legal argument. I mean, the council should try to be a little more considerate that everyone have a right to employment. I mean, under the human rights, Article 23 say I have a right to a job of my choice. And my choice is to sell dog food. I'm a disabled individual, so I can't really do no strenuous work, so this is what I choose to do to try to make ends meet for me and my family. I have a right to support my family as an individual and as a citizen. But the council, with this order that they got, deny me the right to open up a vendor at these dog parks. It denied me my human rights, as well as they're in violation of the constitutional rights of the 14th Amendment, as well as the 13th Amendment, because in other words, it would be infringing upon my rights as a free man. You were saying that I'm still a slave and y'all got control and dominion over me to tell me that I can and I can't. See, so I'm asking you, ladies and gentlemen, to reconsider, to go within your ordinance on and about the parks and amend that an individual could operate on and about, but not within the parks, would be a more reasonable and a more fair ordinance that will accommodate not only me and the city, it would also accommodate the people who bring their pets to these parks, who also want refreshments or whatever for the animals just as well as they want for themselves.
Yes, sir.
And so all I'm asking is that I be given the opportunity to open a vendor as a citizen of the state without the infringement of the council denying me that right. And they said, oh, I'm doing this, I hope, politically correct. I've been patient. I came up here before and I was denied the right to come to speak. And I was going with patience to do this. So I'm trying to do this the proper way. Sure. I'm not trying to go out and be no bogarter and just do things illegally. I'm asking the council to reconsider and think that, y'all have a right to feed y'all family. So I feel this man right here have a right to feed his family also.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you very much. I know Mr. McDowell and several staff people have had chances to talk to you about some of the challenges with peddler's licenses and franchise agreements, and I'm not sure what type of latitude there might be to look at amending existing ordinances, but I know there's been some dialogue. Exactly what's transpired and what's happened since then, I do not know. I understand your position. I disagree with some of your conclusions, but that's why we live in this great country. We can disagree on some things, thank God, and certainly recognize your right to come here and have your say. We are at the end of public comment. If there's some additional discussion or some illumination that staff might be able to share on Mr. Taylor's question, I'd be happy to hear it right now as the final word on this. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you very much. All right. Is there some illumination or anything else? Well, I guess that wasn't a request. Will someone please give us some additional word on exactly how this conversation has moved forward? Yes, sir. Please, absolutely.
Just to make sure we cover everything and make sure that all of us on the same sheet of paper, I'm just going to offer. I'd like to offer a motion.
Yes, sir.
That we conclusively come up with something that is applicable to other persons who are in these kinds of situations, and that we bring that decision at our next council meeting or work session, whichever one.
Do y'all want some time to talk about it?
I mean, that's what I'm asking.
Good.
I mean, what committee would we appropriately put that in?
Economic and Community Development. Economic and
Well,
Community Development.
all right.
We'll do that?
Can we do that?
Yes, sir.
I so move then that we take that to Economic Development Committee.
All right, second by Mr. Davis. Any discussion? We'll move to the previous question. Clerk, call the roll. Just take it up. I'm sorry.
We're referring it to
There's
committee.
a motion sending it to Economic and Community
Motion of
Development.
reference.
Have some further discussion. I think Mr. McDowell is fine with this. Let's talk around the broader issues here, not this vendor specific, but if there's some broader issues that might allow this type of work, and if there are some very clear challenges that we need to be aware of, we just need a report to the committee and a report to the full council. With the previous question, clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rickman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye. Is there a non-debatable motion to adjourn? Any discussion? With the previous question, clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rickman?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Yes.
Mr. Duval?
Aye.
Mr.
On it.
Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye.
Have a good evening.
Yes, sir. Oh, yeah.